we're going to get going here. First off, I want to start off. I did not plan on this, but I thought about it. I want you guys that served to stand up. If you served, please stand up. You guys cannot imagine how thankful I am. Because, like I've said this to Eric, I've said this to a couple other guys, you guys had the guts to do what I didn't. I was so self-centered when I was a kid. I didn't have the guts to do it or the forethought to think, oh, maybe I could serve somebody. So, thank you guys. It's really cool that it's just awesome. So I'm going to read this quick, kind of try and read it. I ran over my bifocals on Monday with a tractor, so we're hurting today. Yeah. While on active duty, Eric Frohardt served on various SEAL teams, deployed multiple times, and conducted combat operations all around the world. After 12 years of service, he was medically retired after being injured in combat. Upon leaving the Navy, Eric used his skills and experience to become an entrepreneur, CEO, and director of a nonprofit. Today, he's a consultant and a public speaker. Eric has a wife, Leah, and have been happily married for 23 years. They have kids ranging from 14 to 20. Eric volunteers for the Navy SEAL Foundation and serves as a board member of Global Partners in Hope. He is active in his church and in the Omaha community. Most important of all, Eric is a fellow believer and puts his faith and relationship with Jesus first in his life. So Eric will be here, and he's going to share a story about overcoming adversity along with a few lessons learned along the way. Most of all, he will share his testimony and how God has been there each step of the way. So Eric is from where I grew up. We went to different schools, but I knew of Eric. Then I started dating my wife, and I got to know his brother. And then I met Eric. We both graduated. He went to one college. I went to another. We played each other. We beat you. But who's counting? But I remember at Christmas, we had met. We were working out, lifting weights, and he was in the weight room, and I was in there, and I was bigger, of course. It's always a competition, man. And he said, I'm done. I'm going to join the Navy and be a Navy SEAL. And I didn't know. I didn't know really what that was. But I thought, oh, all right, you know. And then we came back in the summer. And I saw a different man. And I say man because he was different. The way he carried himself, who he was. He hadn't gone to any training yet, but he was getting ready and preparing. And I watched him. I did not know that a human body could do that many push-ups and sit-ups and pull-ups in a row. I was dumbfounded by it, and it blew me away. And that's when I realized that your mind has control over your body. And my boys, I'll guarantee if you've been in a wrestling room with me before, you've heard me say, do not let your body beat your mind. And that's where that came from, was you, that one summer day, that was crazy. Anyway, Eric is a friend, and I'm glad he was able to come. I'm glad this all worked out. Glad you guys were able to be here. Eric, come on up.
Okay. Is it on? Is it working? Yeesh. Well, I'll try to live up to that. Usually I don't. Thank you for the intro, and thank you, Terry, and thank you, Bethel, for having me come here tonight, and most of all, thanks to all of you. I'm always humbled that people would come and actually listen to me. It's kind of great. once in a while, like I do different speaking events generally for organizations or corporations or whatever you want to call it. But from time to time, I get to talk to, like high school kids in FFA or sports teams or things like that. And once in a great while, I get to do something like this and share my faith and share my testimony. Generally speaking, when I go to do that at like a sales convention for a big pharmacy company, they don't want me to talk about that. So I appreciate the opportunity tonight. And mostly I'm going to share my, in spite of what BJ said, I'm going to share my story and my shortcomings. So I generally get to speak when I'm talking like this to an organization, and it's things like teamwork and leadership and excellence and challenges and all those sorts of things. And those are all important. But tonight is going to be a little bit different. Tonight I'm going to talk about kind of being in the fight, and the only fight that matters. Like if you think about like all the battles in the all the battles and all the wars in the history of the world, right? Like and the I guess the pedestal and such that we put our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines on, right? Which rightfully so. And all those battles and all those wars they fought and all the battles I've been in, more than I could like recall right now. They probably won't even matter, in eternity, right? There is one battle that will matter forever, right? And we're like, I know I could do a lot better, fighting that battle. The battle of good versus evil, the battle that, God and Satan have every day, and the battle for souls, right? No matter how many ribbons or medals that I've earned, right? They're going to be, if I die tonight, they're all kind of worthless, right? Like I would, now I know that, like I would rather earn a ribbon or a medal in the only battle that matters, right? And I'm going to talk about that tonight. These are all more important than any of the things that I've done in Iraq or Afghanistan, okay? And I'll share my shortcomings. First of all, a little bit more about me. I grew up on a hog farm in northwest Iowa, not far away from BJ, and I joined the Navy after 1 year of college. Yes, I tried playing football. Yes, I'm smaller. I tried playing football, and it didn't work out. I went to college for a year, joined the Navy, and then I was a Navy SEAL for almost 12 years. Why didn't I do 20? I got hurt in Iraq, right? I was going to, but I got hurt, and I couldn't finish that career. So since getting out, I've started businesses. I've sold one of them. I've been a consultant. I've been an employee. I do a little bit of speaking on the side. It's not like my day job, so bear with me if you get bored or I stutter. But I do a bunch of different things. I am a husband and a father. I have 3 beautiful girls and a son, 14, 16, 18, and 20. So I'm very busy. And most of all, I am a Christian and a fellow believer. So to me, like I'll talk about identity a little bit later, but to me, that's the most important thing on my resume. Now, speaking of Kodiak, we were talking about Kodiak, Alaska at our table tonight. This photo was taken in Kodiak, Alaska in 2001. January of 2001, I spent the entire month on Kodiak, Alaska. It was not warm. Anyway, tonight, I don't know, I'll try to be done in 60 minutes. You guys shoo me off the stage if I go a little long. If we have time at the end, we'll do some Q&A. I hope there's 2 or 3 things that I say to you that you can actually use. And if not, I just hope you're not bored, right? Like, enjoy the photos, right? Most of these photos are taken from training or for missions or things like that. The next one's not, but you'll get a kick out of it. Anyway, I just hope there's 1 or 2 things or 2 or 3 things that you can use. Most importantly, like, I'm just hoping that, like, my time on this stage glorifies God and maybe even helps somebody in this crowd, okay? Sound good? And if we have time at the end, we'll do Q&A. Now, thank you for laughing. So I have done this slide at like a software convention, and it's just a bunch of millennials, and they haven't seen Rambo or Commando. And I'm like, this is what's wrong with our country, right? So anyway, this is what people think. Navy SEAL is going to look like this, right? Big biceps or whatever, and like, sorry to disappoint, right? If you were thinking I was going to be bigger and stronger, I apologize. Instead, and I'm going to have to go back and forth, I don't have a clicker right now, you get the Keith Urban stunt double, right? So anyway, I heard like the TSA guy, literally, on my last speech, I was getting ready to go talk at a convention in Miami or whatever, and he's like, you look like Keith Urban. Are you a stunt double? I'm like, no, right? Anyway, I thought it was kind of funny, and I had to steal his line and put it into my little speech here. You know, we have these kind of preconceived notions of like what someone should look like, right? Or what we think they might look like, or we'll judge someone by their cover, right? And if someone tells me, you don't look like you could have been a Navy SEAL, I go, that's the whole point, right? I ain't trying to, right? I ain't trying to look like that. And there are plenty of people that do. I'm not one of them. Now, there are a lot of people that think us Navy SEALs are superhumans, okay? Maybe it's the difficult training, the dangerous missions, sometimes against impossible odds, and yet we still have a decent track record of success. And this leads people to thinking like, oh, they're just different. They're superhumans. I'm here to tell you, we are not, okay? We are not superhumans. Sure, becoming a Navy SEAL is very hard. I will say that, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. Sometimes being a Navy SEAL is harder than the path it is to get there, right? The job is actually hard. But we are not superhumans. We get cold, right? We get tired. We get hungry. We even get scared, right? I've been scared many, many times, and I'll share some stories about that. But one of my main points is I don't want you to put anyone on a pedestal, right? Especially not me. Like, I get to talk to you, whatever. I do not deserve anything great for that. I'm just trying to share my story and glorify God, okay? We put people on a pedestal, whether it's our athletes, our entertainers, and once in a while even a politician or whatever, right? And we do that with our warriors, right? We put these people on a pedestal and we think, oh, they went and did that thing, and we just think they're just different, right? And we're normal and they're not, and that's how they did it. I just want you, like, don't let that thought enter your mind, because then it becomes an excuse, right? I promise you that I am no more special than anyone in this room, right? I promise you, I am as flawed, maybe more flawed, right, as everyone else. Now, when people find out that I was a Navy SEAL, I get two questions. Wasn't it hard? And weren't you ever scared? And the answer to those is yes, right? I was scared on my first swim in the ocean, right? I had never seen the ocean. I grew up in Iowa, and then I got introduced to the ocean in a really bad way, right? SEAL training. So I was scared. I was scared of the ocean. I was scared the first time I went scuba diving in a swimming pool. And I'm underwater breathing. I'm like, this isn't right. It freaked me out. I was scared the first time I jumped out of an airplane. But that was my first lie. I was afraid every time I jumped out of an airplane. Every single time, right? I was one of those, like I said, I never saw the ocean before Bud's, but the fourth time I got on an airplane, I was wearing a parachute and I jumped out of it, right? I have more takeoffs than landings. So I was scared at all of those, and I was scared on my first mission, which this photo was taken from. If you can see it, you can kind of see the FLIR image there, right? The FLIR image there is capturing, it's from a helicopter sitting like right here, and you can see my teammates, the warm white bodies there, they're running towards you can almost see a block in the top right corner. That's a building that we're going to raid, okay? That building is full of Al-Qaeda terrorists. This is 2005 in Iraq. It's full of Al-Qaeda terrorists who are wearing suicide vests and have AK-47s. You can also kind of see a helicopter on the top and 2 bodies roping onto the top of that building, and I'm one of those guys. So this is in the middle of Iraq, not the middle of Iraq, but some city, I won't tell you which one. It's in the middle of the night. I'm wearing 70 pounds of body armor, right? I'm looking through night vision tubes. I reach out from the end of the helicopter. I have to grab a rope and slide down it 40 feet on top of a roof of a building that's full of, ends up having 8 or 9 Al-Qaeda people in it with suicide vests and AKs. Was I scared? Right? Yes, I was. Now, I know I think, what is it? The Bible says, do not fear 365 times. I told you I'm flawed, right? I tried to do that. I think it's not about not being afraid, right? It's not about being fearless. It's about how you handle that fear that matters the most. If we think about bravery and courage and how much we celebrate those things, right? Look at all the guy movies that we love, right? Starting back with Rambo and Commando, right? We celebrate bravery and courage in our books, in our movies, in our culture. But if you look at the definition, the word fear is in there, okay? The way I think about bravery or courage is when I can do what I know must be done, even when I'm afraid, right? And if you think about fear like this, fear is an opportunity to make yourself more courageous or be more brave. It's kind of like temptation. Temptation can be a good thing, right? Because it's an opportunity to do the right thing and strengthen your character. Fear is the same way. Fear is it is literally the weight you lift. Think of courage as a muscle. You're not going to get more courageous just sitting there and not having to overcome any fear. But fear is like that weight you lift right here to make that courage muscle stronger. So think about that every time you're afraid. And if you're not, fear as an opportunity. And by the way, if you're doing something dangerous or daring and you're not afraid, you're not brave, you're just crazy. Okay? And by the way, those people exist. I've met a few. And if you're not scared once in a while, maybe you're not pushing yourself enough. Right? And it doesn't have to be climbing mountains and stuff like that, but having a goal or something you're trying to accomplish that's, it's a little bit past what you think you might be able to do. I think it's okay to be afraid, in the right way. My biggest fear, by the way, was always failure. And this wasn't the kind of failure, there's a fear of failure that prevents people from doing things I'm gonna fail, I'm not gonna go try it. First time I had an opportunity to speak, I was supposed to go talk about fearlessness, and I tried to write that speech. I'm this would be wrong, right? Because I was afraid. It was a big room, kind of like this, and I was very nervous, right? I'm nervous tonight. It's not about, like I said, it's not about being fearless. It's about doing what you need to do. My biggest fear, though, was always failing my team and letting my team down. Because if I failed, the mission would fail, a teammate could get hurt or killed, right? And I use that fear of failure to help me because I was afraid, I wanted to become the best SEAL I could possibly become. So I used that fear to kind of push me forward, right? I didn't want to let my teammates down, so I let it push me forward. Fear did not get the best of me where I didn't do anything. Fear got the best out of me, if that makes sense. And there's quite a distinction. So don't think about it as always a bad thing. You can use that fear to your advantage. Like the fear of heights, right? If someone is on the edge of a barn and they're shingling it or putting tin on it, it's the fear of heights that keeps you alive, right? So it's not always, you can use it to your advantage. I'm going to tell a quick story. This story takes place on Super Bowl Sunday, 2008, and we were in Iraq. Again, I'll be pretty vague. It doesn't really matter what city. But we're in Iraq. We think we're going to watch the Super Bowl, okay? At the time, I was at a team, and mostly we'd ride around in black helicopters and raid targets. And that night, the helicopter pilots told us that the helos were down for maintenance. because it was a Super Bowl, right? And we're like, all right, that's great. So there's literally, this is 2008 now, right? This isn't the Iraq invasion. So there's a Domino's pizza on base at this point, right? We're like, we're sick of this chow hall. We're going to Domino's. We go to Domino's. We load up some pizzas. We had some whiteboards. You know, everyone's played squares, gambling. We had our little squares bets going, and we're like, oh, you did the scores at the end of the quarter or whatever. I forget how that works. But we had our bets placed. Lord forgive us, we gambled. We had our bets placed. We had our pizza ordered. And what happens? Our pagers went off, right? And back then, we had to have these pagers on base because we would walk around base in Iraq. But anytime that pager went off, and these are like a very secure pager for the unit I was at, like a certain code came up, and this one was like 111 or whatever, doesn't matter. But it meant get your butt back to base. So we get back to base, and there was an HVT in our AOR. Now, I typically love, like every industry I talk to, whether it's pharma or tech or even ag, like they all got their acronyms, right? And you don't understand them. Like the military, trust me, has its share of acronyms. HVT, high value target. AOR, area of responsibility or area of operations. Anyway, we had an HVT in our AOR, and we had to go to a TST, which is a time-sensitive target, for a CK, capture kill mission, right? So there goes our Super Bowl plans. We did a very quick plan, and we're kind of known for planning very quickly just because of the sheer amount of time we spend training together. Like I tell companies all the time, if you don't spend the time together and like get to where you have that cohesion and that kind of joint consciousness, you do have to plan more. But we spent some time planning. We knew if you fail to plan, you can plan to fail, all those like pithy sayings. But we also knew like sometimes the plans were worthless, right? But the planning process itself was important, right? The exercise of doing it. We also understood that people and teamwork was much more important than strategy, right? And that's more of a corporate thing, but I think that applies everywhere. And the plan is written in the vacuum of a little briefing room. Like that's a vacuum. There's nothing inputting it. The mission takes place on the battlefield, right? Where Murphy is present and the enemy gets a vote. And the enemy had guns too, right? So we had to make a quick plan. We knew it wasn't going to always work according to plan, but we just kind of went with it. Okay, talk about my helicopter insertion and our target infiltration. Now, this is not a part that I would normally share with other audiences, but sometimes I would have a 60 or a 90-minute helicopter ride. Because if they sent my unit to go get this bad guy, like it was a really bad guy, and sometimes we had to take a long flight to get there, and I had this habit, a really good habit at the time where I would like, all right, I know I got 60 minutes, right? I'm going to start with the Lord's Prayer, then I'm going to say a prayer, over the mission and the health and safety of the men, and then I'm going to rehearse the whole mission in my brain. Everything from helicopter lands facing north, get outdoor, run this way, stop. Let the helicopter take off, stay there, look around. Now move out on this bearing, right? Move out on this bearing for this many kilometers, look around. Like I went through it in my head to that. Like I played the whole mission in my head, kind of like they used to say Michael Jordan would play a game in his head before an actual game. I tried to do that. But before that, before all of that, I would say a prayer and kind of walk through the whole thing. So we land in the desert. We are patrolling. We're in the middle of the desert, 4 miles away from this town that we're going to. And we're going to patrol under the cover of darkness into this city. And then we're going to silently surround 3 different buildings. There's about 25 of us. And we had to surround those 3 buildings all at once because we knew this Al-Qaeda leader. He was in one of those 3 buildings based on our intel. But we couldn't just take one down at a time because we would lose. Element of surprise, right? So SEALs always are outnumbered. We rely on speed, surprise, and violence of action, right? Those are our kind of principles of operation. And I remember we had gotten, we patrolled through the desert in the middle of the night. We'd gotten to our I was leading my element to building number 2. Building number 2 had a little compound wall. It was about a cinder block wall, maybe this high. It is pitch black, 0 illume. So no moon that night, no stars. Like, it was just pitch black. Perfect operating weather when you're wearing night vision goggles, and they don't have them, right? So I got my gun up on the wall. I'm waiting on the third element to get over to their building. I'm pointing my gun at the doorway that I'll soon be taking the team through, which is from here to that little open space right there, right? And I'm sitting there like this, and I'm thinking, like, this is going according to plan. We're going to be back by halftime, right? Now, if it went according to plan, I wouldn't be telling this story, right? It would be kind of dumb, right? So, spoiler alert, it did not. Now, all of a sudden, I'm sitting there, I'm holding down over there, and all of a sudden, there is a bunch of gunfire, right? A bunch of gunfire, both suppressed and unsuppressed, then some really big explosions. So like, ba-ba-bang, boom, ba-ba-bang, boom. And it's like 5 big explosions. And my first thought was, oh no, they stepped on IEDs, right? Because there's a lot of IEDs out there. And a call comes across the radio. He's all, like, shots fired, suicide vests, boys, be careful. What had happened as the third element, like 8 guys were getting ready to surround a small building, all the Al-Qaeda operatives, terrorists inside, they kind of somehow my team had gotten compromised, and rather than stay in there and wait, they ran out of the building trying to get as close as possible to my teammates and clack themselves off and take a few of us with them on the way to seeing Allah, right? So now all these suicide vests blow up, right? And the intel had said there might be suicide vests, and like, it was pretty obvious there were. And I'm sitting, again, just kind of picture this. This is great. This is perfect. I'm like this far away. I'm perched over a wall. And a guy comes out of that door, and he's wearing a suicide vest, and he has an AK. Now it's pitch black. He can't see me. He can't see any of my teammates, but he's already too close, right? Based on I felt the ground shake from those suicide vests 100 yards away. So I knew he was already danger close, right? So I could not let him get any closer to me or my teammates. Guess what? I could also not let him go back into that building because we're going to go in there. And I don't want him to go in there waiting for me wearing that suicide vest, right? It's never good to be near a suicide vest, like as a practice, but it's always worse inside, right? Just because the explosive, it has more concussive wave inside. When it's outside, it can dissipate. By the way, it doesn't matter when you're this far away. You're just kind of toast. So we had decided, I had no choice. I engaged him. He fell dead in the doorway, right? Now we've had suicide vests, gunfire, and this dead guy. And remember I said speed, surprise, and violence of action? Well, we had lost element of surprise. So we had to, regain some momentum. And it was like, time to storm the castle, right? So I remember just hopping over this compound wall, and I'm heading over. I'm going to lead my team through that door, right? I'm going to lead my team through this door and get into that building. There's probably 5 or 6 rooms in that building, and go, capture or kill the rest of them. Now, we are taught early and often that complacency kills, and that night I was complacent, which sounds crazy. Sounds crazy. Like, suicide vest had gone off, and I had just shot someone. How do you get complacent from that? Well, I had done so many missions, right? This was my 7th deployment, okay? Hundreds of missions, thousands of room entries, lots of bad guys have tried to get me. That was a day at the office, right? I had gotten so complacent that I didn't take it that seriously. I hopped over the wall, and I came over I came over to this room, and I'm getting ready to go through this door to go into this room. I just kind of use this to illustrate. Now, let's move that over here just so you can kind of see it better. The door's right here, okay? The door's right here, and this is the bad guy room, okay? And there's a dead guy right here in the doorway. He's in the doorway. And I literally have to picture this. Pitch black, I had just shot this guy. He's wearing an unexploded suicide vest. And I kind of have to straddle him, right? And you're just kind of thinking like, ooh, hopefully I don't step on it or whatever. Anyway, it was a corner-fed room, and all that means is the room feeds from the corner, like it indicates. And you could kind of clear a corner-fed room mostly from the outside because I could look down this wall, and I couldn't see all the way down that wall, right? And I just felt like I don't think the rest of the bad guys, I could hear some rustling. They're like 2 rooms deep. We need to get through here quietly and then storm into the other rooms. That was kind of the idea. So I step over this guy, and again, I was complacent, right? The room looked clear from the outside. I step over this guy, and I stepped on some debris or some glass on the ground, and I find myself, I'm 3 yards away, 3 yards away from an Al-Qaeda terrorist who begins to spray me full automatic with his AK. Now, remember I talked about speed, surprise, and violence? He had all of those on his side, right? And I'm sitting there, I step through the doorway, and he just starts stitching me up, right? And I remember obviously it was milliseconds or a couple of seconds, but it felt like an eternity. They talk about your life flashing before your eyes. And in that moment, I had this feeling how did I get here? Because I felt like, okay, this is where I die. How do I get to this point? Where I find myself in Iraq, in the middle of Iraq, on Super Bowl Sunday, it's freezing cold outside, and I'm chasing Al-Qaeda, and I'm, in a small room with this terrorist, and this is where I'm going to die, right? How did that happen? I should be at home watching the Super Bowl with a warm pizza and a cold beer, or pop, whatever your preference. I'm not trying to. How did that happen, right? Instead, I'm there. Well, we'll do a quick rewind. I grew up on a farm in northwest Iowa. That farm right there, which no longer exists, courtesy of Highway 20, going through the... Yeah. Anyway, that was the farm I grew up on. And we were a hog farm, okay? Now, it was a lot of work. The hours were long, and I made no money, so what's not to love, right? All of these, you see all these shows now like ranching and cow farms and stuff, that's the glorious farming. There ain't no shows about us hog farmers, right? There's no Yellowstone, right? Or no version of that on a hog farm, I'm telling, and there won't be. Maybe we should write one, but anyway. This is the non-glamorous farming, right? Hog farming is hard work. And like I said, I hated it. I literally hated it at the time. But now with the benefit of hindsight, which is one of my superpowers, with the benefit of hindsight, I have come to love growing up on that farm. Because I promise you, nothing prepared me for all the hardship and all the things that I would face in my life more than that farm right there. It literally forged me. Right, it taught me, the work ethic of a farmer is unmatched. Right, I got a very good work ethic from that. I learned how to endure the elements. Most of all, I learned there was really no value in complaining. Right now, by the way, farmers complain more than anyone. Right, this is me, a farmer, talking the weather or whatever, but it was useless. If I complained to my dad, he would say, "Go do these hogs" or whatever. If I complained, it was just going to make it take longer because it was not going to work, right? So I learned all those things, and I can honestly tell you, there were days on that hog farm that were harder than some of my SEAL days, right? Now, not all of them, but it was hard, right? And then as BJ said, I did try to play college football. I was in Mason City, Iowa, at a little place called Nyack, Northern Iowa Area Community College. Now, I was okay in high school. I thought I was better than I was, but like you're playing in a really small town and like big deal. You get like 20 tackles, you think you're a big deal, but you're playing against like little guys like me, right? And then you go to college and like they're all bigger, right? So needless to say, I wasn't big enough. I wasn't fast enough. I wasn't strong enough. Well, I just wasn't good enough, right? And I just being like sitting there, I was just kind of like demoralized by it. And I remember one night in a dorm room, kids, close your ears, right? So I was in a dorm room. I may have had 2 or 3 beers, but we were watching a Navy SEAL movie, right? It was literally G.I. Jane, the dumbest Navy SEAL movie ever, right? The dumbest one. And I just remember thinking, I'm going to go be a Navy SEAL. Like this light bulb went off, right? And I literally stood up in a dorm room in Nyack, and there's like a few people in there. We're kind of having a little party or whatever, watching a dumb Navy SEAL movie. And I go, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. They're like, yeah, whatever. Like, that's fine. And there was someone in that room who said, you'll never do it, you can't do it, you won't do it. Like, and that's all I needed. I really needed someone to say you couldn't do it. And I shook that person's hand and made a bet. And I enlisted in the Navy the next day on a bet that I couldn't become a Navy SEAL, which is not what I teach kids to do, right? Like to do things on a bet or for out of spite, but literally that was my kind of impetus for it. Now I was enlisted that next day. This was in February, but I was on the delayed entry program. So then I went back to SAC in the summer. And I was running the gravel roads. I was doing my push-ups, pull-ups, and sit-ups. I was swimming 2 miles a day in a pool. All the things I needed to do, and everything I wanted to do in order to make it through buds. Now, I would say I never achieved my gridiron goals, right? But I learned a lot from that sport. Any team sport you learn a lot from. Football, especially because it's hard and it hurts half the time. I learned, commitment to the team, how to be a team player. How to prepare, right? Whether it was the off season or the practicing before the games, how to win and how to lose. I lost a bunch of games, right? But the biggest lesson I got from this sport of football was the value of an unanswered prayer. You see, I wanted nothing more in life than to be a football player, right? And when it didn't work out, I was like, kind of broken at first. But now, again, hindsight, my superpower, I knew that God had much bigger plans for me, right? So after that, I went to boot camp and did some other training. I was never in the fleet. I had a contract to go right to SEAL training or BUDS. I showed up at BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training, which is statistically the hardest training in the U.S. military, okay? So in our class, the average attrition rate is like anywhere from 70 to 80%. And that's people who are already pre-qualified to be there. So the way it kind of worked, let's say 2,000 people in my boot camp, and there's a bunch of top athletes, and they all screen them. Maybe 200 can show up at BUDS. In my class, 190 showed up. 190 showed up. 6 months later, there were 19. So we had a 10% pass rate, right? 90% attrition. And if you did, like the thing I like to say, like the biggest thing is if we had a photo like this big, but I could make it bigger, and I could have 190 people lined out, and like we had our shirts off, right? We're standing at attention, and I gave you a Sharpie or a whatever. I said, circle the 19 that are going to make it through training. You wouldn't have circled me, right? And you wouldn't have circled half these guys. Now, certainly some of them looked the part and were the part, right? But you can't judge people, again, on their appearances. Better yet, we're in this, computer world. Let's bust out some Excel. Everyone's a fan of Excel, right? Right? Any spreadsheet geniuses here? So let's take your Excel file. Now let's make 190 rows, right, with names. And then there's columns. Run time, swim time, push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, obstacle course time, all the measurables, right? And we tested once, and then I said, highlight the rows of the people that are going to make it through training. You wouldn't have highlighted my row, right? If you looked at their resumes, we had a We had all these college athletes that hadn't failed. We had triathletes. We had an Olympic alternate to the decathlon, right? So one of the best athletes in the country. He was the third best decathlete out of all of them. He had the best run time, the best swim time. He could do the most push-ups, the most pull-ups. He was the biggest guy, the fastest guy, and it was just, he was swimming in a different gene pool, I'm telling you, right? The guy, when I said earlier, we're not mutants, he actually was, okay? Now, he literally quit on the second night of Hell Week because he had never really failed, right? So the point is, you can't judge people by their appearance, by their measurables, or even their resume or their pedigree, right? Those are all data points. They do help. You can't tell off of those quick things how tough. You can't judge the size of their heart, right? There's no quick way to do that. That's what Buds is. It is a 6-month test of their heart, right? Like that's how, and there's no written test to do that, right? It is revealed. This taught me a couple of things, right? Having a purpose. When you have the right why, you can endure any what. Also, there was kind of this tug of war between keeping the end in mind and looking at the top of that mountain. Like, that's where I'm going. But then there's days when it's so hard, and if you look that far ahead, you'll be like, no, I just got to take it one step at a time, right? So there are moments in the military where you're like, today my goal is to make it to lunch. Right? You go meal to meal to meal to meal. That's it, right? And sometimes that's what you got to do. And I found now, like, there are days where I have to kind of keep the end in mind, right? Obviously, with eternity, that's the most important thing. But, like, if I have a business thing I'm working on or whatever, like, I got to have an aim. But then there's times where I'm like, okay, it's a 3-foot world, as my friend says, right? That 3-foot world. So kind of going back and forth between those things. And I found that what really helps is when you have clarity and will, right? If you're not clear on what you're trying to do, you're never actually going to succeed. You have to really know, this is what I'm trying to do. Like, it has to be crystal clear, and then it has to be something you're willing to do. And of course, it has to be part of God's plan. I could have all the clarity and will about being in the NBA, and it ain't going to work. Right? That's not God's plan for me. I'm pretty sure, right? He didn't make me that big. Now, I'm very blessed to have had the family I had. This is a pretty funny photo from my Bud's graduation. My mom, she died back in 2024, but I learned a lot from her. She was very calm. Our house was chaotic. She was always so calm, and that I got that calmness, and it really, it helped me, in chaos, and especially in combat. People were like, how did you get so calm? It's my mom. My dad is not calm, right? He is quite disciplined, quite strict, but I'll never forget, and he was kind of work hard, play hard, respect women, all the most important things, but I'll never forget a moment when I came home from college and I told my dad, I was like, Dad, I'm gonna leave college and become a Navy SEAL, right? And I'm just waiting for that SWAT. And my dad's a big guy, okay? Big guy. And he wasn't afraid to backhand you, right? And I was like, and he just looked at me and he goes, I think you'd be good at that. I think you'll be one of the few that make it through. So just as powerful as having someone say you can't do it is having the right person say you can, right? And that's something I try to remember now as a parent, when one of my kids comes up with a crazy idea. Anyway, longer story. I checked into SEAL Team 5 after jump school. I was there for a couple years, did a couple of deployments, met some great people, awesome teammates, amazing experiences. While I was there, a brand new guy, you're honing your craft, getting better at the job of being a SEAL, becoming a better teammate, trying to be a better leader, and noticing the leaders around you, and just kind of learning very quickly. I was where I wanted to be, doing what I wanted to do, and having a great time in the process, but I kind of always wanted more. Before I joined the Navy, I had read all these books. This is before podcasts and YouTube and all that, right? I remember reading, I got some I got like these Reader's Digest articles on buds training, and then I read a book about Navy SEALs, but it was like a Vietnam era. Like that was all you had, right? But I was consuming everything I could, right? And I read about this team. I kept reading about this team, right? At the time, it was called, which I was like, whoa, that sounds rad. And it was this elite counter-terror, hostage rescue, national mission unit, right? And you have to be a Navy SEAL. You have to be a SEAL for like 4 or 5 years and do 2 deployments at least before you can even try out to go there. I was like, oh, there's another level. And I was always curious if I had what it took to get there, right? And eventually I got there. I ended up going to this team now called Naval Special Warfare Development Group, NSWDG, right? I ended up going there and spending the bulk of my career at this team. Now, I won't say much about the training, not supposed to. I won't say much about the missions. I will say that it was everything I thought it would be, right? When I joined the Navy to go do something, to go become a SEAL, it was a lot. It was very similar. Like, I had to just take my skills to the next level. The same skills, just faster and more accurate. I had to be a better teammate. I had to be a better leader. One of the things that stands out the most, though, like it's all the whole time in the SEAL teams, like you've never arrived, right? They take that feeling away from you very, very quickly. Because when you finish buds, you feel like, I made it. And then you're a new guy, and they whip you into shape. And then you get into your second platoon. Oh, now I know everything. But then there's someone with 3 platoons, and he whips you into shape. Then I finally make it to dev group, right? I make it to dev group. I'm like, oh, I made it. But now you're a new guy again. And guess what? Your spot on that team is rented. It is not purchased. And you're paying that rent every day because someone else wants it. We just had, just like this, NFL draft we just had? Like, all those people that play on an NFL team, someone else wants their job, right? And that was the case here. So there I was, again, where I wanted to be, doing what I wanted to do at the elite SEAL team in the nation, like literally during the height of the global war on terror. Like, I was deploying, I was having fun. I mean, I was doing dangerous and daring stuff, and of course I lost some friends. But at some point, I got injured, and the Bureau of Navy Medicine deemed me unfit to deploy, right? And I'm like, unfit? Like, that just sounded, like that was kind of mean, right? Like, I'm fit. What are you talking about? And they said I could no longer go to war. It's just the result of some misdiagnoses and then, a decade in combat, a decade of running around Iraq and Afghanistan in body armor. It takes a toll on the body. And I had gotten really good. I had gotten really good at switching from husband/father to warrior, right? I could flip that switch because I had to do it so often. Like, towards the end of my time at Dev Group, I literally had a wife and 3 kids. So I had a wife and 3 kids. I would shut that part off. I would go over to Iraq or Afghanistan and I'm a Viking now, right? You had to switch it off and on, right? Because some of the things that make you a good, loving husband and father don't, always work, right? They should have, but for me, I just switched that. I had to flip that switch. But nothing was harder of all the training I went through and all the battles I went through. Quite frankly, nothing was harder than the last time that I switched off that warrior mode and I no longer could deploy, right? And that was really the biggest struggle. Now, I would say there's lots of different ways to do it. People try to fill it with booze, with pills, with other drugs, right? They chase hobbies, they chase work, right? They chase fitness outdoors, all those things. I didn't do all those things. I've had my share of, bad moments. I eventually found that it was only my faith that would get me through that. And if I always tell people now, if you're struggling with anything, just give me 30 days. 30 days of waking up early, getting on your knees and praying, reading the Bible, and writing in a journal. Just do that for 30 days, right? Nothing is more life-changing. At some point, I tried that, and I was like, whoa, right? And I literally, like now, it is part of my day every day, right? I'm going to wake up early, I'm going to say a prayer, I'm going to read the Bible, and then I'm going to write in a journal. And I wished I would have known this sooner. And I'm telling you, right? I am telling you as one of the most flawed people here for sure, like in the last 8 or 9 years, I've read the Bible cover to cover every single year just by reading 15 minutes a day, right? And I'm on my 4th time through the ESV or whatever right now. And I'm telling you, nothing has made a bigger change in my life. I've learned a lot of things. I can tell you, like getting out of the military, and I was, since then I've done a bunch of different jobs. I can tell you that SEALs don't know everything, and we cannot do everything. And combat and business and combat and life are not exactly the same, right? There are some things I think that help and that are the same. I'm not going to talk about certain skills people need because I think there are skills we should have. To me, it's more about traits, right? Every job I've had to learn new skills, but it is as long as you can learn, it's not that hard. Like, it just takes some time. It takes longer to develop traits, character traits, or attributes, right? Or if skills are what I can do, traits are how I do them. You know what I mean? And skills are a predictor of how well you'll succeed when things are going according to plan. Traits predict how well you succeed when they're not. And that's poaching a line from a good friend of mine, but I really liked it. So to me, it's all about traits. And one of the first ones is discipline, right? And discipline for me, there's lots of different definitions, but having, in the Bible, as they say, self-control. To me, it's very simple. I like simple definitions, but when I'm disciplined, I actually do what I've decided to do, right? Where I've decided, hey, I'm going to do this. This is my diet. This is my exercise. This is what I'm going to do tomorrow morning. I'm going to wake up, pray, read the Bible, and write in my journal. I'm like a big believer in having a moment of stillness, silence, and solitude. Right? No bigger change in my life. None whatsoever. Nothing has helped me. I have so many friends that have struggled with what they've seen and what they've done for this country. I sleep like a baby. Right? But it's not because of me. It's because of it's the work I've put in, praying. I call it abiding, right? Abiding in Him in the morning. Now, I know I should, abide with Him throughout the day. Quite frankly, I don't always do it. I get a little bit off path, but once in a while I'm like, okay, stop, take a breath, just remember what this is all about, right? And discipline is a big part of that. Just being able to do what you said you were going to do. I have to read these quotes because I really like them. Leonardo da Vinci said, "The height of your success is gauged by your self-mastery, and the depth of your failure by your self-abandonment." And I think Peter said it better in 1 Peter 4:7. "The end of all things is near. Therefore, be clear-minded and self-controlled so that you can pray." To me, it's like, yes, I want to be self-controlled because I know when I lose a little control at night, maybe I'm not perfect. There's times when I have a drink or two or more. But guess what? It's a little harder to pray and read the Bible that next morning, right? So to me, discipline is a superpower. And discipline is like getting those things done on your bed. It's not about getting them done on that night where you have 8 hours of sleep and a perfect morning routine. It's being able to do it on your worst days and every day. Similarly, grit. There's lots of different definitions of this. Like, you can't watch a sports show without grit, right? Perseverance, endurance, tenacity, and, willpower, all those things. To me, one of the parts of grit that has made the biggest difference in my life is just resilience. Because resilience to me is that ability to return to baseline. Or even better, it's the ability to get back up off the ground when you fall and when you fail. And I have fallen and I have failed so many times since getting out of the Navy. I got a new job. Now I'm an employee again, okay? I don't know how it's going to go, right? But I know if it doesn't work out, I'm going to get back up, pick myself up off the mat, and keep going. That ability to do that, and I have learned, quite frankly, I don't even fear failure anymore. To me, it's part of the process, right? It just means, I can check that one off. That didn't work. I know that's not what God had in mind for me. This one to me is kind of like a tug of war, right? Everyone's heard extreme ownership. My teammate Jocko, right? You're in charge of everything. Now, to me, I want to balance that. I want to balance that with surrender. Because to me, yes, you should take accountability and responsibility for your life. Like, I'm responsible for my actions and I am accountable for what happens. I have also learned that you can do everything right and still lose. Right? I have seen teammates do everything right on a mission and die. I have done everything right at a job and it didn't work out. Like, we're actually not in control of the results. To me, it's all about do your best and release the outcome, right? I want to do my best and release the outcome. Yes, I'll take responsibility when it doesn't go well, but I know I can do everything right and it doesn't work. I can't really control much. I can control my attitude and my effort. I can control my preparation and things like that. But I know that if I do my best, it increases my odds, right? Another one is humility. Goes without saying. To me, this is just like I'm no better than anyone else. When I'm on a team, I'll do whatever it takes. If I'm competing with someone, I don't think I'm better than them. That makes me prepare harder, quite frankly. And I'd say in the military, especially as a SEAL, like, you do get confident, right? Sometimes you get a little cocky, but then also you get humbled, right? It humbles you because A, you fail so many times, and B, you're surrounded by some real warriors, right? Like, you are surrounded by some American studs. And I would tell you it's very, very humbling. I've had my ups and downs, right? And I'll tell you, every time I've gotten too arrogant or something, like, God has humbled me. So humble yourself or he will humble you. Like, I have learned that too many times. As it says, Jesus said, whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first should be a slave to all. Right? He is the ultimate model of this humility, and he is the ultimate, warrior in the only battle that matters. Right? Selflessness is very similar. Okay? Some people put them in the same, as the same thing. I think of humility as an attitude of how I feel about myself, and selflessness as a way I behave around others. So for me, that selflessness is like when you're willing to, like, sacrifice for others, right? If you look at, like, all the write-ups for, like, Medal of Honors and Army crosses, Navy crosses, and all the biggest medals that they win, or all the things that we celebrate, it's when people, like, go out on a limb for someone else, right? At great danger to themselves. Many times they die, right? It is that self-sacrifice, not self-help, that is the way. And as Jesus said, for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to what? Give his life for the ransom of many. So it's been a little long here. I'll try to wrap this up. We had a belief that you didn't rise to the occasion. You fell to your level of training, okay? I'll take you back into that room. I find myself 3 yards away from this guy. He's spraying me with an AK-47. And all I did was run down my wall and shoot him while I was running. That sounds very simple, right? It is actually simple. It's just not easy, because simple and easy are not the same thing. But I had the benefit of having done that 1,000,000 times against paper targets before I had to do it for real, right? And I got lucky, right? Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, okay? I was double lucky. I was double lucky that night because he was wearing a suicide vest that failed. So not only did he miss me from 3 yards away, his suicide vest failed to blow up. And I'm sitting there like, whoa. Like, I came out of that room, a small room, like smaller than between this drum and this speaker and that piano. And 2 guys shot 30 rounds, 60 rounds of rifle fire in a small room. And he gets hit and I didn't, right? Now, we believed it wasn't that we were good at what we did or that we were naturally talented. We just always knew we would be better prepared. right? And that's a lesson I've used for everything in my life. If I'm going to succeed, it is not because I'm good. It's not because I'm talented. It's just like if I want to do well at something, I just have to prepare. So that is how we succeed in that situation, okay? It was a very bittersweet night for me. Not even 5 minutes later, less than 10, more than 5, adjacent room, actually an adjacent building, bunch of gunfire, and 4 of my teammates get shot. 4 of them shot, 2 of them killed. One of them ear to ear, one of them armpit to armpit, right? And we spent the rest of the night fighting our way through those buildings just to recover their bodies. And on that night, I shot all my bullets. So I had one magazine in my gun, and I carried 5. So I shot 6 magazines, right? Just trying, and threw both my grenades. One was in the other room, but the rest was just trying to recover these bodies. And it was a very bittersweet thing for me, and it's a reminder for me every time the Super Bowl comes on. I think about them, and I think about how they're not going to get to enjoy America's pastime. And I think about that when I think about that now when I'm at home watching the Super Bowl, that there are brave men and women standing in harm's way for me, right? The saddest part of this story was that very morning, we had a little wake for them as they flew their bodies back to Virginia Beach. And my friend, Louis Frohardt, he came up to me. And he kind of knew I was a Christian, right? I wasn't like a mature Christian. I certainly wouldn't talk about it like this. I wouldn't wear it on my sleeve. And he was asking me about my faith and what it all means. Why did God not just take the bad guys, and why did he take them? Why did he take Mike and Nate? And I didn't have the answers. And quite frankly, I wasn't ashamed to talk about my faith. I was afraid. And I was afraid because I didn't have the answers, right? And I didn't want to so I just kind of changed the subject, right? I didn't know it all. So I changed the subject. And the next night we were surrounding another building, and I don't have time to go through all the details, but I'm standing by a window. I'm here looking through a window, and he's over there. The building is rigged to explode. It blows up. And all 7 people that are around that building, I'm the only one to finish the deployment. The only thing that saved me I would be standing in front of a window. The overpressure of that explosion threw me 20 yards away from the building, and everyone else got crushed. And Louis got killed. And that morning before that, he had asked me about my faith, and I was afraid to share that story. Because I didn't have all the answers, right? And I didn't know what to say. I was willing to run into a building or rope onto a building full of terrorists with suicide vests and AK-47s for the flag on my shoulder. But I was not willing to share my faith for that cross that I wore underneath my body armor. Right? And it took me a few years after that to realize how wrong that was, right? And I realized too that God doesn't need me to be an expert. What does he say? We are to witness, not be lawyers. There's nothing wrong with being lawyers if there's lawyers in the room. Sorry. But we are to witness our story, right? You're worried about not being an expert on religion. You don't have to be a theologian to share your story. You are an expert on your own life, right? A friend of mine, I was explaining this to a friend of mine, and I'm trying to get better at memorizing verses, so please forgive me. But he sent me this from 1 Peter 3:15. In your hearts, revere Christ as Lord, always prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect. And to me, that is the best way, to be in that fight. The only fight that really matters, right? And I have the benefit, again, of hindsight. and having failed so many times and having had so many opportunities to share that with others. But like that night, the guy I could have told about that died. So to me, that's haunted me, right? 5 minutes over, I'm sorry. I want to thank everyone. This is where I typically tell people, when I'm at the corporate event, I'm like, I hope you guys got something out of this. Like, what are 2 or 3 things you really liked or whatever? And I just say, we live in the greatest country, which I believe we do. And we live here because of the sacrifices of so many brave men and women who've done so much more than me, which is true. And then I tell them, like, live a life worthy of their sacrifice, right? Like, these are all true. But, like, to this group, I would say, like, we are so blessed. And we have the gift of salvation. And I would just tell you, live a life worthy of the sacrifice Jesus paid, right? And don't be afraid to be in the fight, the only fight that matters, and be able to share your story. That's it. Thank you.